episode of Safe Space where we talk about everything that relates to family, relationships, and marriages. My name is Olumide Kayode Omoshebi, and I would be going today solo as Folua is a bit indisposed today. So my voice will be the only voice you would hear for the while. Once again, I would welcome everyone to the month of March as we are in the first week, and I congratulate you for still being in the land of the living. Today, I would want to discuss about the peculiarities and the significance of the month of March in our struggle against uh, domestic violence or abuse and child sexual abuse. For the past 13 years, the month of March has always determined the curve of abuse in Nigeria. I don't know how, but this is how it works. Once domestic violence rises in the month of March, then it continues to rise throughout the year and it peaks at November, where it starts falling down. So over the years, we have watched the month of March with particular concern because once domestic violence goes up in the month of March, then the year will definitely be a year of sophisticated abuse, ceaseless and relentless abuse with a lot of fatalities. So over the years, we've always warned that be careful for the month of March. A lot of us uh, who stand against domestic violence, who help victims, know that the month of March has a very big significance in our struggle against domestic violence. So I always warn, be careful about the month of March. In case you don't get it, it means again, if I may explain again, it means if the rates of domestic violence goes up, that is the reports and the violence goes up in March, then it continues to go up like that to the end of the year. It does not come down. That is if we are plotting a graph. So it means that domestic violence will keep going up. That means once the month of March is full of domestic violence, that means the entire year, that has been the case for about 13 years now. So we always warn that once Wahala starts in March, then the year is going to be a terrible one for fatalities of domestic violence. Surprisingly, what baffles me is that it is the same month of March that we have fastings beginning of both the Christian and the Muslim faith. So how is it that during fasting, abuse is increasing? It makes no sense because fasting means that we are drawing closer to God, denying ourselves of some pleasures so that we can uh, be closer to God in worship, both of the Christian and the Muslim faith. But unfortunately, the month of March also sees usually an increase in the rate of domestic violence, and it has already started. So, because we are in the spiritual mood, that is, everyone is in fasting, everyone is trying to get closer to their God, there is now a tendency for what I call religious manipulation. Now, manipulation simply means to get whatever I want from you by any means necessary. Manipulation means when someone deceives you through words or emotion to get you to do something. Manipulation is always a means and a tool of control. They manipulate you to get to get you to do what they want you to do. And one of the big means of manipulation all across the world is religion and tradition. Religion meaning using religion to make you do something. What if you're a Muslim? They use the Quran, they use the Hadiths to make you to do it. If you're a Christian, they use biblical scriptures as an argument to make you see that what they want is actually approved by God, but it is by way of manipulation. So this is what, especially in marriages, relationships, it is called religious manipulation. Now, some years ago, I was in a divorce clinic. We conducted a divorce clinic, and there were about 85 women. One woman left, so it was 84. And these were people who, when you are already in a divorce clinic, it means that your marriage is practically over. It means that those people did not want their marriage again, and they had already moved out of the house. So we had a divorce clinic, especially for women who left because of violence, domestic violence or neglect. So there were 84 women there, and while we interviewed them, 81 out of 84 said it was God that told them to marry their husbands. And this is what we usually hear. God told me to marry my husband. I said, how? They said they prayed about it. They went to various prayer mountains. Their pastors were involved. They prayed. And then they heard that God said, this is your husband. And that is why they married their husbands. 81 out of 84. But this is a problem. Because if God knows the beginning, Abi knows the end from the beginning and the beginning from the end, that means God already knew that the marriage will fail, but still told them to go into the marriage. If God will be that wicked, knowing that in the same marriage they will be beaten, battered, bruised, neglected, and driven out of their homes, if God already knew, then why would God still lead you into that situation called marriage to that particular person? So it became a rather funny thing during that divorce clinic to see that God became the major cause of marital breakups during that divorce clinic. Because if everybody says it was God, it was God, it was God, that means God was the problem, the singular factor that all of them were claiming. They prayed about it. So according to them, that means God led them into their temptation. And the Bible says, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. So that day, God became unjust, unfair, because he already knew their marriages would fail, but still led them into it. And this baffled me, that all of you, you said you prayed and God, every 81 out of 84. So we began a second round of interview saying, okay, how did God tell you? You said God told you. How? Some will say they had a dream. And in the dream, they saw this man. One said, I cannot forget. She said she saw herself standing on one side, then her husband standing on another side, and there was like cement, wood, and all that in between them. And she heard a voice that build. So when she woke up, she took it to mean that God was telling her to build a home with this man. Another said, they heard God say, my daughter, this is your husband. Another said they took it to God in prayer. They went to their pastor, and their pastor also prayed, and God spoke through their pastor. Everyone at the end of the day was saying it was God that told them to choose their husbands. And at the end of the day, the marriage did not go well. In fact, it was a divorce clinic because we were helping all of them through a process called divorce. So when all of us put our heads together to see that there was another one, this one I couldn't even, he said in their church, the pastor told them, all the women to stand up who were looking for husbands, and they got up and told them to write the list of all the men who were asking them out. And all of them started writing the list of names of the men, and they put in a basket. He told them to fast for 3 days and come back. And as they came back, Pastor told all of them to line up, and he would place his hand on their heads and say, okay, number 2 is your wife, the other one will be number 2 is your husband, number 3. That's how they were just choosing husbands because their pastor said so. Now, remember the title of this is religious manipulation. All of this, people started giving different encounters and experiences, how God told them, how they heard this, how they had a dream. Some people say, their dream always comes to pass, that I know my dream. My dream always happens, and that is how God talks to me. But now your marriage is over. But one thing was missing. When we checked through the Bible from Genesis to Revelations, we never found a place where God chose a wife for anybody. Which is, it is not there in the Bible where God told anybody, Sam is your husband or Grace is your wife. It is never there from Genesis to Revelations. So how is something that never happened in the Bible start happening in Nigeria? Remember, the title of this is called religious manipulation. And why I'm bringing it up today is because we are at two, when you call it two-edged sword, we're in the time of Lent, which is Christians fasting all over the world. We're in the season of Ramadan, which is Muslims fasting all over the world. Those are the two major religions in the world. And then at the same time, during the fast, we are having the highest rates of domestic violence and abuse. How does that even compute? So a lot of these issues stem from people who are in toxic marriages. This tells you that when you are in the wrong marriage, whether you are fasting or not, whether you are praying or not, it will not work. Why? Because what is wrong? Fasting will not make right. What is wrong? Prayers will not make right. Wrong is wrong, right is right. Because we know that the God that we serve does not change white to black and black to white. So we have over 70% of cases of domestic violence and abuse from religious sources. People who claim that God told them this, God told them that, their pastors or imams or their spiritual leaders told them this and told them that. However, we have been doing this for a while and found out by records from 2019 that 87% of cases of separations and divorces, domestic violence and abuse, are from a particular religion, which is the Christian faith. Secondly, the Pew Research Center in the US released their report in 2024 that 51% of divorces in America are from Protestant Christians, which now tells you by statistics all over the world that the Christian faith has the highest rate of failed marriages amongst all religions that exist. And the number one reason is because of religious manipulations into relationships. I must bring this to fore because we're in that season again where fasting prayers and people will come out with different things saying that God or Allah told them this, told them that. When it comes to marriages, when it comes to relationships, statistics and research has shown that people who claim that they heard from a God always end up making the wrong choices in marriage. Now, people with the most enduring marriages, that is, marriages that are successful, you will find out that they married because of the character of the person. Research has shown us that marriage is not about religion, but about character. The most successful marriages have not been religious marriages. It has been marriages of character. That means that I married him because he is a kind person. I married her because of their character. So it tells you that marriage is a process. A successful marriage is a process of character assessment. That means people who marry for character have more lasting marriages than people who marry for religion. Let me repeat that. It shows that people who marry for character have better marriages than people who marry because of religion. Now, how do people marry because of religion? It is so bad that now people would say, if you don't even marry from my church, they would not, unless you marry from my church, as if your church is a guarantee of a successful marriage. Your church also came from another church. Your pastor came from another church. He grew up in another church, started his own church, and now there is a doctrine that you must marry from his own church. In such a way that people from different churches now begin to have problems. That became very prominent some years ago. Then people who say, oh, I'm a Christian, you're a Christian. That does not guarantee a happy married life. You don't marry for religion, you marry for character. Character has always been the singular lasting factor that keeps marriages together. Religious manipulations. The second part of religious manipulations are those who are now in abusive marriages and are being told that according to religion, you cannot leave, you must stay, because what God has joined together, man cannot put asunder. Let not man put asunder. So, in order to make you remain in an abusive or toxic marriage, they begin to use religion and tell you things like, don't worry, it is the work of the devil. Don't worry, he will change. Don't worry, she will change. Don't worry, this and that. They start telling you that even if you separate, you cannot divorce, because the Bible says God hates divorce. They begin to bring a lot of religious sentiment because they know that your religion is your weakness. Your weakness is the door to your soul. So they look for your weakness and use it to get you to do what you don't want to do. Ordinarily, nobody can do what is being done to you in your marriage and go scot-free, or nobody can do it to you and you will remain there. But the only reason you are remaining there is because your will has been taken over by religion or tradition. Traditionally, they will tell you that in our generation, nobody has left, nobody has divorced. You cannot go. You want to bring shame to the family name. They want to. So they use these weaknesses. Those that know that you are a person who is very religious, you fear God, they now use religion and tell you you cannot leave. So a lot of people are trapped in the embers of their marriage because of religion. And a lot of people have been killed in their marriages because of religion. They say God hates divorce. Divorce is not the only thing God hates. God hates sin. Now, God hates sin, but he doesn't hate the sinner. In fact, the Bible says, for God so loved the world, that is, for God so loved the sinner, that he gave his only begotten son. But God hates sin. He doesn't hate the sinner. So therefore, God also hates divorce, but he does not hate the divorcee. Once you have gotten it wrong, you know that you are in a toxic marriage. The first thing for you to do is to protect yourself. Every law on earth gives pardon to every human being called fundamental human rights, which is number one, right to self-preservation. That is, you have a right to protect yourself and to defend yourself in times of trouble. How can you use religion to take away your right to self-defense and take away your right to self-preservation? That is not right, because even the Bible tells you to flee from all appearances of evil. That is, you run away. But they tell you, no, stay. And that is how Shija, Shija is a research organization, in 2010 did a research in Nigeria, and they published that Nigeria loses between 300 to 350 women every year to domestic violence. That was 2010. By 2020, Nigeria had grown to lose over 500 women every year to domestic violence and abuse. So that tells you that every 24 to 48 hours, Nigeria is losing one woman to the choice of the man she chose to marry or she chose to be a lover. Now, domestic violence is not all about women, it is also about the man. This year already, we've lost about 15 men to the kind of women that they married. However, you find out that most of them remain in abuse because of religion. And that is why I have come today to talk and to warn about religious manipulation, where people, your family members, your church elders, your mosque the leaders of your mosque, the clergy and clerics, come and use religion to tell you to remain in a place where you could die. The truth is that God does not want you to die. In fact, he sent his son, according to Christian religion, to die in your place. If God values your life so much, then why would He tell you to remain in a place where you could die? It doesn't make sense. And this is how a lot of people have lost their lives or had permanent bodily injuries because they refuse to leave a toxic marriage. Today, let us be frank. I've been talking to a woman who was doing very well for herself. In fact, she was made a regional manager of a multinational pharmaceutical company. The same day, her husband blinded her in both eyes because he felt that she was proud, because she would now be proud. She came into the marriage complete, 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs, and she would leave the marriage totally blind. A marriage that she had separated from the man for 2 years. But some people kept going to her, saying it is the work of the devil, that God hates divorce, that what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. They prevailed on her until she packed back into the marriage, and today she's blind in both eyes. With her blindness, she's still the person taking care of 2 children. Ladies and gentlemen, religion is not an excuse for violence. Religion is not an excuse to remain in violence. Religion is actually to save your life, not to take your life. Religious manipulations. It is very ironic that the rates of violence, domestic violence, will go up in the same month where men and women are supposed to be getting closer to their God in fasting and prayers. Then, in the same way, the religious manipulation serves, first of all, to choose the wrong person, because you are not choosing by their character, you are choosing by the religion. And the same religion will not tell you, after seeing that you make the wrong choice, that you cannot leave. Then it is a religious trap. It is religious manipulation. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a difference between marriage and religion. And when you look at it in the Christian faith, Matthew 22 tells you that there is no marriage in heaven. It means that marriage ends on earth. That means it does not, we need to thank God for that. Because that means if you married a man on earth and he was beating you, or you married a woman that was actually very toxic and violent, then you die and go back to your maker, and the man that is beating you on earth now continues to follow you into to your eternity. We thank God that Jesus made that very clear, that there is no marriage in heaven. So it means it ends here. So if it ends here, that means it has no significance in the afterlife. That means that it is only for your pleasure. So if it is only for your pleasure, why would it now become capable of taking your life? And then you cannot do anything about it. Be careful of the month of March. The month of March in Nigeria has always symbolized domestic violence. And here we have the International Day, I think, for the woman, also in the month of March, recognizing the struggles of women all through the generations to this present generation. And it's been made so that women will be recognized and protected. We know that women are not the only victims when it comes to domestic violence. We also have men that are victims. However, the proportion of women to men is astronomical, because all through time, all through ages, women have always been at the receiving end in multitudes than men. So therefore, we urge you, if you are in an abusive marriage, if you are in a toxic marriage, if you are in a marriage or relationship where you don't have peace, where there is arguments, there's fighting, marriage that makes you lose your peace of mind, makes you lose appetite to eat. Some people looked better when they were single than when they are married. In fact, marriage has made them look old. They've lost weight, they've lost sleep, they've lost appetite, they've lost health. A lot of them now become victims of high blood pressure because of the palpitations of the heart when it comes to their marital matters, where you fight all the time. Your body assumes the posture for conflict. Your organs, your blood, your systems begin to go in conflicting rhythms to the well-being of your body. Oh, it is a terrible thing. Ladies and gentlemen, if you find yourself in a toxic marriage, please, religion is not an excuse. Religion to remain in a toxic marriage is called religious manipulation. Your marriage is not a religious matter. Your worship is the religious matter between you and your God. Your marriage is not between you and your God. It is between you and your husband or you and your wife, which is totally different from you and your God. So if your marriage wants to take the life that God gave you, please protect yourself by leaving. Leave a toxic marriage. Religion is not, I repeat, religion is not a cover and should never be used as a cover to harbor domestic violence or abuse. Remember, the first step of religious manipulation is to make you be in a relationship with someone simply because you are of the same religion. Two, people using religion to get you to choose them as a spouse. I remember those days when someone will come to you and ask you and then tell you that, I've been praying and, God told me that you are my wife. Another would come to meet you and said, well, I've been praying and God told me that you are my husband. In fact, I have one of my closest friends. It was his wife that came to meet him. And funny enough, he wasn't even in this country. He was abroad in the US, where a white woman came to meet him, who was a senior pastor in the church, and told him that God had told her that he was her husband. At that time, he didn't really know much. He felt very flattered, a very respected white pastor coming, and he accepted, they dated, and they got married. Their marriage did not last 1 year. It was full of problems, full of misunderstandings. And abroad, a man loses more in marriage than any other person. That was the beginning of his problems. Why? Because people use religion to get you into a relationship with them. At times, when you even say you saw someone, people, they will tell you, oh, have you prayed about it? Did God tell you? Have you gone to the mountain? Have you gone to meet pastor? Have you gone to meet Imam, have you spoken to the cleric? Have let them check it for you. There is no such thing, ladies and gentlemen. There is no such thing, because marriage is between man and woman. And the book of Proverbs 18:22 tells you categorically that he that finds a wife has found a good thing. It tells you that you have to go and look for. But we are so lazy that we now want God to go and look for you. You will sit down and God will just come. I found somebody for you, and then gives you the name, gives you the address. Now go, hello. God told me you are my husband. God told that has led to more failed marriages than any other religious belief. The first step in religious manipulation is using religion to get you to choose someone, not for their character, but just because you are both Christians. The second phase of religious manipulation is now when, after you have now married the person that religious manipulation got you to choose, you are now in a marriage where the same religion is used to keep you in the wrong spot. So, ladies and gentlemen, beware, be careful when it comes to choosing a spouse, when it comes to choosing a husband, when it comes to choosing a wife. Religion is not a matter of finding husband for someone or finding a wife. Religion is for you to worship your God. Marriage is for you to have a husband or a wife. Don't confuse both. I think at this stage, I would have to round up what I am saying. And then be careful of the month of March. The dynamics changed in 2025, but it had been constant for 13 years, where March was used to determine the curve of abuse for the entire year, because once abuse rises in March, it goes on like that. It keeps rising till the end of the year, which means it will be a very terrible year. But one thing in Nigeria is this: you know that the moment something goes up, whether prices or anything goes up, it hardly comes down. If you are in an abusive marriage, if you're a victim of abuse, please leave. I think, yes, we can go to the phone lines in case anyone want to have a question to ask or might want to contribute before we round off the process. Now back to the studio. Please patch in any phone calls through. You can give the phone lines out so that anyone who has anything to say, probably trying to reach me through the studio, can get the lines to call. All right, then. For those who might want to reach out to me personally, you can reach me on 0909 3214 942. 0909 3214 942 for those that may want to reach out to me. And this has been another episode of Safe Space. Unfortunately, Finn is not available today. If I'm sure that by next week we'll be together. Okay, someone has asked. My number is 0909. Let me start again. 0909 3214 942. I'm sure by next week, Finn will be back and we'll have a very robust time on this program, Safe Space. But till then, thank you and God bless. See you again next Thursday, 6:05 to 7 p.m. God bless.